Now concurrent session 2, Food, Water, and Climate Change shall commence. First of all, I would like to introduce the moderators for the session. Dr. Ismail Serageldin is ICEF Steering Committee, co-chair of the Board of Nizami Ganjavi International Center, Emeritus Librarian of Alexandria, former VP of the World Bank. Now I would like to ask Dr. Serageldin to moderate the session. Dr. Serageldin, if you please.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear friends, dear participants here and online. The discussion we're about to have is one of the most profoundly important in the world. The food and agricultural sector, by far the biggest consumer of water in the world, is also a major emitter of greenhouse gases. And it is also very inefficient, since we lose about 30% of the food that is produced never reaches the consumers. More important than all of that is also the fact that we, despite that, still have about 1 in 9 of the global family of humans are hungry. They're not getting food. So we need to transform that under a green agenda, transformative agenda, that will turn that sector from being a contributor to the problem of greenhouse gases, both by CO2 changes in landscape and methane from cattle and other types of issues, towards a precision agriculture that makes use of the new innovative technologies, and climate smart agriculture that will enable us to bring solutions to the problem of carbon capture and sequestration. We will hear from our panelists, and I will introduce them as they come on. And I will start with Ms. Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, who will give us an overview of how she sees that problem. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. And can I say straight away, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are in the world, but also in short form to say I agree with what the Professor has just said. And that's why it's such a pleasure for me to be here for this critically important event. And I'm aware of the history of this event and the way you bring people together. I'm here as Secretary General of the Commonwealth because I'm determined to take every opportunity available to me to try to build new understanding, new partnerships, and new alliances in this, the fight of our lives, and our fight for the lives and livelihoods of our brothers and sisters around the world. And I'm here in particular because we need to close the gap between the change makers and the decision makers, between those with the knowledge and those with the power. Our Commonwealth family, comprising 2.5 billion people in 56 countries, spread across 5 continents and 6 oceans. 60% of our population is under the age of 30. And I want to assure you that all our heads of government are totally committed to tackling climate change. Their commitment and mine comes from the fidelity to the shared values and common interests which bind us, and from experience, because across every region of the Commonwealth, fertile lands turn to dust, wells run dry, storms and floods overwhelm communities, and the ocean rises. Vulnerable states face being consumed by the waves or drowned by debt. The unthinkable has become typical. Yet as climate change advances, we have lost momentum, and the gap on emissions, finance, and justice has widened, whilst the window for action continues to narrow, and the consequences are profound. The food system, which is partly what we are talking about today, is one example of the impact and the complexities, because there is enough food in the world to feed everyone. But more than 1 billion people are going hungry right now. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted trade and economic activity, and climate change is making harvests poor and unpredictable, and droughts are worsening. Land is more acidic, and harder to cultivate. And in many parts of our world, those who produce food are struggling to feed themselves. So food insecurity is a consequence of man-made climate change, but it is also a cause, because agriculture and its associated practices uses half the world's vegetated land. It represents a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions, and it drives 31% of biodiversity loss. Against this background, the impact of conflict and instability in our world has throttled the supply of grain and increased prices, compounding economic and environmental pressures to bring us to the point of emergency. We are in an age of unprecedented hunger. 50 million people teetering on the brink of famine, from the Central American dry corridor through to the Sahel, to the Horn of Africa, and eastwards to Asia. The World Food Programme describes a ring of fire stretching around the world, where conflict and climate shocks are driving millions of people to the very edge. Many Commonwealth countries form part of this ring of fire. We have 33 small states, 25 of which are small island developing states, and 12 of the world's least developed countries. Each of them are feeling the effects of this profound and dangerous crisis. So we must act. And these discussions are often technical, and that is natural. After all, we're looking for solutions to complex problems. But there is no single cause, and there can be no single fix. So our discussions are inherently political. And my message to you today is twofold. First, we cannot have business as usual. It will not cut it. We have to innovate. And second, we cannot do it on our own. A challenge such as this demands that we depend on each other, so we must work in partnership. And I'm here today to offer the Commonwealth's hand in friendship and partnership, whether you are from our 56 countries or not. And in our partnership, you will find a tried, tested delivery. And we know what works because we deliver at the coalface, where the situation is most perilous, where the people are most vulnerable. Delivery through our flagship Blue Charter, our groundbreaking Living Lands Charter, and our pioneering Climate Finance Access Hub, which has unlocked more than $310 billion in vital resources for the countries which are more exposed to climate change. And you will find innovation, the kind of new thinking which brings together leading Silicon Valley firms and thinkers to establish a new group in a new consortium to unleash the power of artificial intelligence across our small states to help them build more modern, resilient, sustainable economies. And you will find leadership, the kind of leadership which led to our heads of government to first warn of the dangers of climate change in 1989, before there was even a process for international negotiations, and which continues today at the highest level of the international system. Just as we have our strengths, our history, and our capabilities, so do you. So this must be a moment for us to come together to strengthen existing partnerships and forge new ones. Because if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? It will be too late. And I really thank you for engaging in discussion. Much that I've heard, we absolutely agree with, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much for that wonderful overview. Really, thank you. Let me now turn to a brilliant young lady who will bring us a voice of youth to looking forward on what to do about this. Ms. Faten Attig-Bahar from Tunisia, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I have my presentation, please?
Technicals, can we have the presentation, please?
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's such an honor for me to be here to join these distinguished speakers to talk today about one of the most important topics on water, food, and climate change. Coming from Africa, water and food security are two from the most challenging issues that we have in the region, and specifically from Northern Africa. And here I was trying to give you a few examples for what we are bearing for this. And what we had over the last year that we lost, over the 40 last year, 2/3 of the water resources decreased. And we are also expecting that we fall over 50% by 2050. Also, what we have is that the 90% of the total land are not really lands that we can really use for agriculture activities because they are situated in arid or semi-arid region. And our resources also in the region are coming from outside, which also might cause some challenges in using them sustainably for ensuring sustainable production and use of food. Adding to this, that the climate change issues that are affecting the water resources and also affecting the food security are also impacting these vulnerable communities. And here I can give an example from Tunisia, as I'm coming my homeland, okay? And this is a concrete example that we lived this year, the last month, that our resources on water got reduced at 30% because of climate change, and the projections for 2050 are also more challenging because we expect that this will affect several sectors, the agriculture, of course, and other infrastructure, tourism, governance, and also health. And here the question came, how can we mitigate this in order to sustain, to have the sustainable development in this sector, and what kind of approach and what kind of activities, actions, knowledge action we should have. And here I wanted to highlight a few of those in addition to the science, technology, and innovation, that they are very important in this present time. Also, there's the transdisciplinary approach and also the support of all level of collaborations across sector, across region, disciplines, to expand the knowledge and understanding of climate risks on the water and food production and security. There's also the Nexus approach, because now we are in an area we're also talking about the production of a huge amount of, for example, of hydrogen. This also will be linked to the use of water. So how can we have this responsible governance in a way that we're using this in a sustainable way, and also having the solution that will not touch the vulnerable communities, using the innovation and innovative solutions. So now we are talking about those innovative solutions, and also, for example, the new technology, the digital revolution, the AI. How can you use this in order to have the climate resilience and support the most vulnerable communities to take part of the solution, and also understand what is happening and take part of implementing some of the action there. I'm just giving a few relevant examples from research networks or funders that support disciplinary actions for the water and energy food security, and just I want to highlight a few of those actions, mainly for Africa, from the region I'm coming. For example, the Belmont Forum call for the Africa that will be communicated in the next few months, and this is, there will be a pillar on the water, food, energy, and health nexus. And also for the future Earth, there's global research networks, such as the Water, Energy, Food Nexus. I belong to that research network, and also we have others under Future Water, and also the SRI. And definitely, this would never be happen without having leadership and also building leadership, because now we are in a very critical time and we need to build leadership, and leadership needs to also to have it within the young scientists and also the young generation of actors who would take the lead. And here just certain few examples, and also a few examples of how can we build leadership for this young generation by liaison to the ECR networks, the early career scientist networks, few examples from the younger system scientists and Future Earth, and also bringing them to a decision-making levels and building their capacities, providing them with the trainings, and also have them aware about what is happening and part of what is going on, and definitely create this platform where they can engage. I'm seeing some examples, they are great examples, and definitely we need more and more examples to save the world, because now we are running out of time. It's critical period, and we need all to work together to say this. With this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Faten, for this overview, and thank you for your commitment to solving these problems. Since we were in the northern part of Africa, we will now move to the southern part of Africa, where I understand Naidoo has a video recording here to share with us. Can we please have the video now?
Good day. My name is Dhesigen Naidoo from the South African Presidential Climate Commission, and I'm very happy to join this conference today, albeit virtually. I'm speaking to you from a very special place in my country. I'm in Constitutional Hill, which was once the location of a jail in which many anti-apartheid activists were incarcerated, and nowadays is the location of our apex court, the Constitutional Court. It's an important reminder that our approach to development, our approach to a transition to a low-carbon economy in this country and the world has to be guided by a human rights-based approach. It has to have the goal of equity and leaving no one else behind. I think it's fair to say that we are in a difficult space in the world right now. We are governed by a very wicked problem. And the different components of this problem are, firstly, the security-first paradigm, now adopted by many countries in the world, driven in large part by the war in Ukraine, but also a culmination of the difficulties around moving from a unipolar world, a single dominance world, to now a multipolar world. In addition to that, our development parameters are in trouble. In spite of the bold and adventurous and enthusiastic commitment our world leaders made in the form of the Sustainable Development Goals, the latest report card at UNGA 78 is saying that we're far away from where we need to be. Halfway through the process, less than 25% of the targets are on track to be met by 2030. And then we have the difficult trajectory associated with the climate change agenda. We're far away from the global agreements that we want, and the pushback by the fossil fuel industry has been incredible. So this is the wicked problem. And the challenge is, can we find a way of envisioning a journey to cut through this Gordian knot? I want to offer that yes, we can. I want to offer that precisely the way to do it is following a pathway to a climate-smart world that will simultaneously organize for us to not only meet the low-carbon targets, but also meet the development targets and re-empower the multilateral system. Let's examine this very briefly. Climate-smart agriculture. SDG 2, the quest for zero hunger in the world, is in terrible trouble. Climate-smart agriculture will organize for us to do the following things. One, we will be able to have much higher levels of resource efficiency in the system. Two, an investment in renewable energy and localized grids means higher energy security to empower the agriculture industry. Three, this, together with reforming the financial system and the market reforms that are required, organizes for many more new entrants into agriculture, and our food security is once again in a safe place. The same is true around water. The quest for climate-resilient water and water infrastructure that moves away from high carbon to low carbon holds incredible promise. Let me take one example, the example of new sanitation. An ability to engineer non-sewage sanitation that uses less water or no water at all will do a couple of things simultaneously. One, it is a low-carbon solution. It will help to decrease our carbon footprint. Two, in the way that we do it, with a combination of these waterless and low water systems and localized beneficiation of waste, it represents one of our best bets to meet SDG 6.2. And three, we can organize enterprise development around it. The beneficiation of human waste using this methodology saves water, increases water security, saves energy and actually produces new energy from the beneficiation, and you can also get high-value proteins and lipids and chemicals inside the process. So what I am putting to you is that organizing for ourselves to rapidly accelerate into a low-carbon trajectory will simultaneously engage the issues around a low-carbon agenda, increase the possibilities of achieving SDG 2 and 6, and the suite of the other 15 that it supports, and maybe re-empower the multilateral system so that we can have genuine partnership in the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this very precise and very optimistic view and tying together the water and sanitation side along with the water for agriculture side, along with the beneficiation of the soil through the treatments of the wastes that we have. May I now turn to another distinguished speaker, Professor Rattan Lal, who is probably the leading specialist on soil sciences in the world and the leading champion for the idea that the soil can capture carbon and sequester it much better than any other medium that we have. So can we link with Professor Rattan Lal, please, for his video?
I'd like to thank Dr. Ismail Serageldin, Kito Meora, and the ICEF2023 Secretariat are inviting me to make this presentation entitled Food, Energy, Water, Soil, Nexus, or the FUSE. The resources used for agriculture, 38% of the Earth's terrestrial surface is used for agriculture. 1/3 of all land is degraded. 75% of agricultural land is allocated to raising animals. 70% of the global freshwater withdrawals are used for irrigation. 30 to 35% of greenhouse gas emissions are contributed by food systems. And yet, 1 in 7 person is food insecure and 2 to 3 in 7 are malnourished. We need transformation of our strategy to produce food globally. In this connection, interconnectivity is the key. Interconnectivity between soil, its depth, texture, structure, hydrology, fertility, soil carbon stock, biota, terrain, with food, quantity, quality, access, and with, of course, climate, inundation, drought, heat wave, pest and pathogens, and all of that have a carbon footprint, water footprint, energy footprint. It has an impact of competing uses with biofuels, pests and pathogens, and of course with response in terms of adaptation, mitigation, feedback, and lead to sustainable intensification of soil resources to enhance productivity, water use efficiency, nutrient use efficiency, energy use efficiency. This Nexus approach links lithosphere, biosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere in terms of the interactive process and ecosystem services, leading to food security, the human dimension, energy need, economic development, industrial raw material, which are the societal needs, and of course, at the heart of all this is the pedosphere, which is the soil. Interconnectivity of the issue in terms of the food, amount, nutrition, supply, sustainability, in terms of water, renewability, quality, in terms of climate, evaporation, precipitation, in terms of air composition quality, in terms of energy amount and renewability, and of course lead to the inputs, which is radiation, nutrient separation, and deposition, radioactive forcing, temperature. It leads to runoff, erosion, sedimentation, eutrophication, algal bloom, and it causes runoff, gaseous exchange, particulate pathogens, acid rain, and use efficiency, nutritional quality of food, elemental balance in soil, and of course, use efficiency of nutrient dynamics, water balance, all of these interacting together through the pedosphere, soil, with its physical, chemical, biological, and ecological properties. Security, in terms of political, economic, social, environmental, or human, societal, national, regional, international, depends on soil health, on soil quality, on its soil organic matter content, which governs food security, water security, energy security, climate security, health and nutrition security, environmental security, political security, national security, global peace and harmony. Therefore, there is an urgent need for a paradigm shift. To answer the question, what would I suggest to make land management a solution to environmental issue? The logical response would be to objectively and critically consider how do we take land resources for granted and use them as a property without any rights. It would be impossible to keep global temperature at safe levels unless there's a radical transformation in the ways by which we produce and consume our food and manage the earth's finite and fragile land resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has already created urgency about the need of strengthening local food resources, which have more resilience and are based on recycling bio-waste and gray-black water, and also involve soil-less urban food system. Therefore, a prudent strategy would imply making land and agriculture an integral part of the solution and empowering farmers and land managers to restore degraded lands, afforest denuded land, and return hitherto marginal land back to nature so that 50% of the land is under natural ecosystem. Dr. Ismail Serageldin and colleague, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Professor Rattan for that presentation and the clear and ambitious target of returning marginal lands to nature so that 50% is under natural landscapes. And now, last but not least, I'd like to turn to Professor Phoebe Koundouri, who is really at the hub of green thinking in Europe, and dare I say, in the rest of the world as well. So she's also the president of the Environmental and Resource Economists Association. So, Phoebe, all yours.
Thank you very much, Ismail. Indeed, we have a very interconnected system that needs to be managed holistically. Great things have been heard already, and all identified the need of integrating the ambition and the way to achieve the ambition. So if we speak about water, food, energy, and climate nexus, then the interrelationships between the SDG targets that we need to meet are more or less sketched on this diagram, which is not exhaustive, of course. And if we had to identify the SDGs that are particularly central for a sustainable water, food, and climate nexus, it's of course SDG 2, no hunger. You can see it on the upper left side of the slide. Then is SDG 15, land use. Then SDG 6, water and sanitation. And climate action, SDG 13. What you see here is how we measure the performance of these 4 SDGs in 2023 in the Sustainable Development Report published by UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Red means we have stagnation with regards to implementing the goals. Orange means we have huge challenges. Yellow means we have challenges remain. And green means that we have achieved the goal. You can see here maps across the world that are reddish and full of orange colors, red and orange. This means that these 4 SDGs are among the less well-performing SDGs across the 17. So it is no surprise that we are facing a huge water, food security, and climate change crisis. And we need to find a way to manage these systems in a way that they synergize and help each other towards becoming resilient and sustainable, rather than building on their trade-offs, which is what we've been doing the last 100 years or more. And this is, again, I introduced this in the previous session, how we work in the Global Climate Hub. So we have the different units in the Global Climate Hub. One of these units is on land use, water, food, energy, and biodiversity nexus modeling. We use this Fable calculator, which basically takes into account human consumption, livestock production, crop production, targets with regards to pasture and cropland, feasible pasture and cropland, and then productive land adjustments. So in a way, we try to compute, how we can bring together in the land use, water, biodiversity, and food nexus, how we can achieve simultaneously food security, greenhouse gas emission reductions, and meeting the biodiversity goals that have been agreed internationally. And it can be done because we can showcase with different scenarios and simulations that we do, and we do this country specific, and then we integrate between the countries, that by changing diets and crop and livestock productivity and limiting agricultural land expansion, we can protect biodiversity, we can recarbonize our ecosystems. So we use nature-based solutions to help with the climate problem, and at the same time produce enough food under climate change conditions, because it's not only about mitigation, it's about adapting agriculture to extreme weather events, floods, and extended droughts. So with these scenarios, you can showcase how these 3 can be integrated and synergized in order to help of 3 targets: food security, biodiversity, resilience, and recarbonization of the ecosystems, and at the same time, decarbonization of the energy systems. And I just want to close by saying that, I'm going to skip that and just say that it is important to do this integration in order to provide the policymakers and governments with holistic plans that make sense and build on the synergies and not the trade-offs. And we have a way to integrate these models. This is soft integration, but this is integration that makes sense and it gives implementable solution pathways. In closing, I want to refer to this initiative that we are talking about and try to mobilize in Academia Europaea. This is the European Academy of Science, that we need an intergovernmental panel for food security and sustainability. And this panel has to have the same constructive impact as the IPCC report in order to provide the world with awareness of the crisis of the food system and at the same time, solution pathways. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I believe that Ms. Patricia Scotland of the Commonwealth has a beautiful partner directly here in the kinds of work that you want to do, and from Europe with the Commonwealth as well. Let me ask two questions, if I may. Is Professor Rattan Lal still online? Can you check, please? Is Professor Rattan Lal still online? Huh? No, okay. Well, never mind. I will pick up that question, which is that by putting things back into nature management, we must really think in terms of a much broader definition of working with nature. For example, in managing water, we talked about water use efficiency, both in terms of the consumption of water and the manner in which water is transported and so on. But we also have to learn to work with nature's own tools, like the wetlands. Wetlands and estuaries are the reservoirs that nature has provided, and we tend to dry them out and turn them into developments for housing and so on in most places in the world. And then we wonder why there is not sufficient attention to that. Secondly, I wonder if somebody, whether Faten or Phoebe, would like to take a crack at the question of what about rising sea level, which causes saltwater intrusion in deltas around the world? Because deltas are very important for food in many parts of the world, whether it's the Nile, whether it's the Mekong, whether etc. These are all important questions. We would be losing by having saltwater penetrate into the aquifers. Any comments from either of you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is also a very important topic and very important challenge that also we're going to face. And for this, maybe if I would like to talk on behalf of Future Earth and the Global Research Network, we have an an ocean knowledge network who is focusing their studies on this. And also within the Belmont Forum Africa call, we have a pillar who will be focusing on ocean. And I believe that this is also one of the aspects that we will engage with scientists and funders in order to support the knowledge production and also the knowledge connection for this. So we believe this is very important, and we need to have real actions and rapid action for this. And we have some of the plans to deal with this. Yeah.
Good, so you started on plans to do that. How about Europe?
Well, Europe and across the world, aquifer destruction is all over the world, and any coastal aquifer is salinated. And as a result, you cannot grow the crops you need to grow. And it's a very difficult problem and aggravated by seawater, by sea level rise. So there is a lot of work, and you know about that because the World Bank has been funding lots of that work in trying to find solutions for putting more water in the aquifers coming from
recharging the aquifers. But nevertheless, Europe is really way ahead of everybody in the world, particularly my friends in the Netherlands, because 1/3 of the country is below sea level, and they have developed for the last 200 years a system of polders, and they have superb agriculture. Very intensive, not to mention the highly controlled precision agriculture that they do in the glass houses, which incidentally produces as much revenue from the glass houses as they get from the 2 million hectares of very intensive agriculture that they have. So that there's a lot of lessons, I think, to be learned there. Yeah. Incidentally, you mentioned the aquifers. We should know there is a global crisis, which we're not talking enough about right now, but certainly a majority of all aquifers in the world, and specifically even in the United States, are being drawn down much faster than their recharge rate.
Of course.
As a result, the water table keeps dropping year after year after year. And in the US, most communities depend on groundwater. So that's a major problem coming up.
And it's the same in Europe. And when your aquifer is depleted, you face serious challenges with land subsidence. And at the same time, you are degenerating soil quality. So you are losing a lot of ecosystem services there. And it's a crucial problem in Europe as well.
Indeed it is. Let me ask, is Ms. Patricia Scotland still with us? Yes? Hello? Ms. Scotland, could you?
I'm here.
Yeah, well, I wanted to turn to you and see if, having gone through that first round of comments and interventions, you would like to add something to your opening remarks.
Yes, thank you, because I think all the speakers have really enriched the discussion in a way that very much complements what we in the Commonwealth have found. I hope that everyone will look at our Living Lands Charter, because what we're seeking to do is to implement the 3 Rio Conventions, together with looking at how we have to work harder on oceans, which is our Blue Charter, and then using our common sensing work, which is using the geospatial data to enable us to better understand and better predict what's going to happen. So I was fascinated to listen to what each of the speakers were extolling, on the basis that all of us are saying you need a regenerative model which is integrated and multifaceted. And this speaks very strongly to the ecosystem that we in the Commonwealth Secretariat are seeking to build with our member states. And what we found is that we're all facing the same challenges, and all of us have limited money. And so I think what's coming through very strongly is we absolutely have to work in partnership if we are to make the sort of advances that we need. But the last thing is, from what everyone said, it's possible.
And
if we work together, it is possible. We can speed up, we can do it, but we can't do it on our own.
Well, thank you for that, because it's good to keep reaffirming that it can be done. And there is no reason why it cannot be done. I think we know a lot, but getting to deploy that knowledge in various parts of the world against some fairly entrenched interests is not that easy, but we'll get there. I was intrigued by the fact that there was just a brief mention of artificial intelligence, and nobody really picked up on what should be done on that. So I can tell you, perhaps about a month ago, 2 months ago, I was with the FAO and a number of other people in the United States were discussing latest applications. And there's a beautiful application of AI, artificial intelligence, which is called Farmer Chat. And it's been tested right now in Ethiopia and in India. And the idea is that in remote areas where you have marginal lands and poor farmers, and it's difficult for the agricultural extension service specialists to go and visit every one of those remote farms, we can rely on mobile phones. The penetration of mobile phones is enormous. And now language models that we know can easily text to voice is a very standard approach and vice versa. So the extension workers identify pretty much like 60–70% of the types of problems that these farmers will be facing. And then they allow the farmer to speak into the phone and describe in his or her own language what they're seeing. And then the AI gives one of the standard answers that have been prepared, and then even small videos, 1-minute videos, 30-second videos, etc., that the farmer can then see in their own language. That's the main thing, in their own language. And then for those 30 or 40% cases which are not managed automatically by AI, then a real extension worker gets on the line and tries to understand better from the farmer what is it that they need and how to help them do that. And that's now on an experimental basis being done both in Ethiopia and in India in fairly remote and poor areas. So waiting for artificial intelligence is not just in terms of optimizing systems and reaching the best possible outline using satellite data and so on. All that is also important, but on a very human scale, to talk to the farmer, be she alone in the middle of nowhere or a man trying to get his family, etc. And it enables the multiplication of the efforts of the extension workers to bring the best knowledge to these remote areas. So that's, I think, just one thing to encourage us more about that. Now let me turn to the audience and ask if there are any questions that somebody would like to ask. Vali? If there's nobody else. Go ahead. Can you have a microphone there? Take my microphone.
Thank you very much. This was a very illuminating set of presentations that we've had. The question that's been in my mind, and Ismail, perhaps you or somebody else would be able to talk about this, is that in the whole climate change movement, if I may say so, and the whole multilateral process and in the NGO and community processes, etc., agriculture, food production, and soil and water does not get the airtime that other things get. Because when you talk about mitigation, etc., and you talk about combating climate change, the image people have in their minds is the Tesla electric car, or maybe solar panels, or maybe wind farms and those sorts of things. Why is it that we're not giving this the airtime that it deserves? Because, you know, if you listen to Dr. Lal, he's put it very, very clearly about the enormous contribution to global warming that our bad practices in food production is making. Perhaps you could just tell us, why do you think that's?
I wonder if I could just come in here, because in the Commonwealth, we are focusing very heavily now on agriculture for the reasons that have just arrived. And that's really why we have come up with the Living Lands Charter, to be absolutely practical and to look at the contribution that soil and land is making. So I just want to assure you that if you look at our 56 countries, particularly because our countries are right in the middle of this maelstrom, it's become an incredibly important part of the work we're now doing. And I would welcome any partner who is interested in this to come and work with us to turn it around, because we think it's one of the most important areas.
Well, that's good to know. And if I may add, in response to Ali Musa's question, the reason that it doesn't get as much attention is because the primary focus has been on the burning of fossil fuels. And the fact that the emissions have been driven largely by industrialization, and as a result, this is where the first step should be. The second thing, of course, is because fossil fuel producers and sellers are much better organized than smallholder farmers in poor areas. In the Glasgow COP26, the biggest delegation was 500 plus people from lobbyists for fossil fuel companies. In Sharm el-Sheikh COP27, there was 610, far bigger than any country delegation was present there. And of course, you can imagine the debates that are going on around that. Secondly, it's only lately that we've been able to get real attention to the issues of adaptation and resilience, which are much more closely tied in with the kinds of discussions that we've had today, as opposed to just reducing emissions. We happen to, all of us, I think, all the speakers, believe that a proper management of the food and agricultural sector will not only produce more food, have less waste, et cetera, but will also reduce emissions dramatically. In fact, it may flip the sector from being a contributor to the problem to being a contributor to the solution by working with nature-based solutions. That's where it is, and that's where it can be. I believe you have a question there. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. I want to ask you about food waste. And I don't know the latest statistic. I don't know. I remember like 30% of the food that is produced is never gets eaten, it gets spoiled. And, part of it is a food preservation problem, being able to get refrigeration or drying or something, closer to the fields. There's also a distribution problem, getting, particularly for small shareholder farmers, can't get their food to markets that have higher value. And it just seems to me that's sort of the low-hanging fruit, and it's sort of a logistics issue and something that we could get a handle on if we I don't know, if we had technology and systems to help out. So just interested in hearing your views about food waste.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure. You're right. It is a big issue. It is more than 30% of the production. However, I'm not so sure that it's a low-hanging fruit, because the value chain of food is very complicated, and it's international in many cases. When it is local, it's easier to manage and make it more efficient. The international value chain of food production is complicated. It has to be rationalized and optimized. There are big vested interests in that, and it's very, very difficult. We have done, for example, a value chain analysis, identifying the contribution of each segment of the value chain of food production, and it turns out that the biggest negative footprint of the food consumed in Europe is inflicted on Amazon forest.
Yeah, let me just give you 2-3 reasons why this is the case. In many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, about 30 to 35% of the food, that is the crops that are harvested, are lost to post-harvest losses. But that is for very complicated issues. There's no adequate storage, there's no adequate protection against pests. Birds come in and eat part of it, some of it rots. The transport systems are extremely difficult. The roads from the rural farms to go to pick up the material and take it there. So it's not, as Phoebe said, it's not a low-hanging fruit. It really is a transformation of the rural reality in many of the poorest countries in the world, some of whom are spread over huge distances. I mean, if you think in terms of places like Niger and Mali or so on, these are huge areas, Sudan, etc. The second part is that we're losing on the front end there, and we're also losing in the advanced industrial countries because people have gotten into a habit of they buy food at the supermarkets, which has an expiry date. And people throw away because they buy a little bit more, and then they open the fridge and say, oh my God, this has expired. Oomph, it goes, which is not quite the right thing to do, because most of the time it is perfectly suitable for consumption, and the expiry date is now been transformed in the United States to say best if sold to buy, rather than saying expired, which they used to say that. So that's another big loss. The third big loss, which is, if you've ever been in the United States, you probably know, if you go to any restaurant in the United States, they give you portions that you really must be like 7 feet tall and 400 pounds to eat that amount of food. So you leave part of that, and believe it or not, I asked restaurants, they're not allowed to gather it and give it to some homeless people. No, it has to be thrown out according to regulations. So there's a wastage in that. There's a wastage in the consumption side in the rich countries. There's a wastage, but as Phoebe said, it is not an easy thing to deal with right away, because it's embedded in the problem, both in the consumption culture in the West and advanced countries, and in the production reality in many of the poorest countries. So with that, let me now turn to our speakers, give them a last chance, 1 minute intervention. 1 minute, no more.
I agree that the comment by Vali Musa was crucial. We need to bring the land use, water, food, energy, and forest nexus in the center of the climate change debate. So we need an IP, an intergovernmental panel for food security and sustainability to complement the IPCC.
Okay, Faten.
Thank you very much. For me, this decade is a very decisive decade, so any action is very urgently needed in order to adapt to what we have in climate change, and also to build the resilience for food, water, energy, and for everything that could touch the vulnerable communities and everyone in this world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, all our speakers, and Ms. Patricia as well is there with us. Do you want any last-minute word, or shall we close? Hello?
Just to say, I think we need a holistic response, and it is all of us, not some of us. And it's not just saying that IPCC needs a separate, it needs to be included as part of our climate response. And I really do invite you all again to become our partners, because much of what we've spoken about today is what the Commonwealth is actually doing in conjunction with the UN, and the Living Lands Charter is being pursued in partnership with the 3 Rio Convention secretariats. So my last comment, come and join us.
Okay, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panel as we bring this to a close.